I'm here tonight with Darren Lloyd-Gent, organiser of the London Unity User Group. Firstly, what exactly is the London Unity User Group?
LUG, as it's called, the London Unity User Group, is basically a community meetup group which meets up once a month. We have speakers and talks, people discuss ideas, share ideas, and generally just kind of come together as a community.
I see. So what happened this month?
Okay, we had two speakers come in. The first was Barnaby Smith came in and was talking about procedural planet generation, so how you could set that up in Unity. And the second speaker was Leonard Burton, who came in to talk about experiences of VRs and things to consider when working with that medium.
I see. As organiser, what are your personal goals for the London Unity User Group?
Really just to share knowledge, just so that people who are in London working with Unity can come together, they can find people to collaborate, sharing ideas, pitching their work, just generally becoming more of a social community rather than people being just working on forums. So people get to know each other personally and come together.
Thank you so much for your time.
Okay, no problem. Welcome to the 29th LUG. For those that don't know me, my name's Darren Lloyd-Gent, and welcome to the University of Greenwich. I'm a senior lecturer here in Games Design Development, and I'm now lead organiser of LUG. Took over last month. So if any of you are expecting Kat, unfortunately she has left. She is now travelling the world, and you have me to look at instead, so apologies there. A couple of things that I'll just go through. We're still looking for different venues. Now, I appreciate that Greenwich is quite a way for people to come out, apparently, according to some people. So we are looking for other venues to host. We've had a couple of offers. But if anyone knows of a large venue which can have audio-visual capabilities and is near a pub, and please let me know or do some digging for me. Hopefully everyone knows how to get hold of me. If not, just go to the meetup group, send me a message, I'll be really grateful. One thing that we do have as a kind of benefit of me being a lecturer here is that if all else fails, we have a venue. Now, hopefully it won't be in the case where we'll be repeating Greenwich over and over again, but it does mean that we can have something monthly if all else fails. So apologies for those who think that the DLR isn't a cool thing where you can sit at the front and pretend that you're driving. And if you didn't have that experience, get on the front. We do need speakers. We've got a couple of speakers hopefully lined up for next month, which I'll go into in a wee bit. But what we look for in a speaker is someone who has something interesting to share. Sometimes people say, well, maybe these things are a bit too obvious. I don't know about you, but even if it is obvious, sometimes it just reinforces what I want to know or some things that I'm already doing. So if there's a topic, anything to do with Unity, that you feel that other people could benefit from, do it. One thing that I found from doing this a way back is I had about 3 or 4 contacts within a week asking me to do work for them. And for anyone who wasn't there, that was the talk I did with using Arduinos and Unity together to do some weird, cool, funky stuff. And I thought no one would be interested at all. And I was rather surprised on the feedback I got. So if there's something that you want to show off, something that you do well, get hold of me, we can give you a slot, and everyone can learn, give you feedback, show off, and get work. So please, again, contact me through the normal places. But tonight, first of all, we have Barnaby Smith. Hello. So Barnaby's going to be doing a really interesting talk about procedural planet generation in Unity, and then we will have a break. A lot of venues, especially the ones where they're hoping to get people to work for them, have beer. I don't want you to take my job, so there's no beer. But after that, Leonard will be doing his talk on virtual reality about navigating the landscape. And then, for anyone who has anything, it could be 1 second, it could be 5 minutes. It could be that you're looking for people to work with you. It could be, look at a really cool thing that I've done. Let me know in the break and we can set you up for the open mic slots. So anything at all, I'm happy, even if it's another competing university wanting to show off their students, and maybe one person here fits that bill. Good, he's not here. No, it's fine. Let me know and we can set you up. If we finish a bit short, what it means is that we go to the pub. Who came in through the DLR? You may have noticed when you came out of the DLR to the left, to the right, there was a pub, the Clock Gate, and that's where we'll be going for after lug drinks, to network and to continue on. So, without any further ado, Barnaby Smith.
So recently, in my own time, I've been doing a lot of work on procedural planet generation, and as a sort of a big sci-fi geek, it's been something I sort of looked at a lot over the years. And I used to do sort of messing about with Photoshop and 3D modelling software and just make planets that way. But recently, I've been looking at trying to procedurally generate it all in code myself. So this talk is basically an explanation of how I got on. And hopefully, if you're interested in sort of planet generation, it will sort of show you some of the basic techniques to get sort of nice results. So this talk is in 3 sections. The first section is on noise generation, which is one of the more useful techniques in procedural generation. So I'll sort of just go through that. So the classic view of what noise is it's something which interferes with what your intended signal is. So that might be if you're taking a photograph, you get quite noisy pixels if you zoom in. Or it might be you're getting sort of effects on network packets on electrical cables because of some sort of electrical interference, or it can be much more general about things in the world, like sort of irregular, almost sort of random looking things like sort of patterns of dirt and dust. And generally noise is something which people try to reduce. They come up with sort of complex algorithms for basically taking the real world and turning it into something which a computer algorithm or whatever can sort of analyse and work with. So you have to get rid of sort of noise and anomalies. But when it comes to computer graphics, because we're trying to go the opposite way, we're trying to show the world through software, it becomes quite important to actually add this noise and randomness and irregularities into our scene. Because if you just have sort of very simple 3D geometry, it's not going to look very realistic. So you have to have this sort of detail maps, and you have to add in dirt, and you have to. It can't all look perfect because the real world, you don't have perfect spheres, and you do have sort of dirt in the corners and all sorts of things like that. So in general, noise is just basically an approximation of all the irregularities and randomness in the world, and that's quite useful to think of it from that point of view for computer graphics. So when it actually comes to generating noise, there's quite a few algorithms out there. Perlin noise is probably the most famous, which was invented by Ken Perlin in the 80s for the film Tron, because they wanted to add a lot of detail to the walls in it because it looked too flat, and because of the hardware requirements at the time, he came up with what is now called Perlin noise. But more recently, he came up with another algorithm, which is basically Perlin noise, but more efficient, and it scales to more dimensions better, and that's called simplex noise, which is what I use throughout my planet generation. So noise can be used for a lot of things. You can use it for generating sort of different textures and detail maps. You can use it for having lightning guns which shoot out lightning, which you want to sort of vary in an interesting but pseudo-random light way, or you can use it for star fields, or even complex things like terrain generation and sort of planet rendering. And what's really good about it is, like random number generators that you'd use for procedural generation, a small and fairly simple algorithm can be used to create really complex worlds without having to have lots and lots of data on disk. And and have really sort of big downloads or whatever. And it can also, like random number generators, you can have a seed to sift the entire world. So you can have just a number like 17, and every time your program runs with that seed, you can generate whole sort of galaxies of different planets, and every time it will be the same planets. So that's sort of what makes sort of noise really, really useful. When it comes to actually sampling noise for use, there's a lot of open source libraries out there already. What I use is just a C# simplex noise library, and they offer really sort of simple ways to work with them. They've just got different functions with different overloads taking different dimensions. And this is all the code it takes to generate one of these 2D textures above. So you basically just walk through each pixel, passing in the coordinate, and using different frequencies to generate these different noise textures. So these give us quite interesting results, but unless you go to quite high frequency and use it as a detail map, they're not that useful, because you get this sort of coarse detail here, and you get this fine detail here, but it's not, well, it could be better. So one of the ways of getting something more interesting is something called fractional Brownian motion. And basically what you do is you take different layers or octaves of noise, and you sort of layer it all together. So you walk through different frequencies, generally doubling or halving, which is why they're called octaves. And you also change the amplitude. So as you increase in frequency, you'll also lower the amplitude that you're doing, and you get this quite interesting sort of looking result. So you're getting the best of both worlds there. You're getting your large changes in noise, your sort of wide, large changes in noise, but you're also getting a much finer level of detail, which is quite good for things like, well, you could use this for like some sort of basic stock market type thing in a game, or you can use this for terrain generation or all sorts. And when we apply this technique in 2D, you get much more interesting looking results, because you're getting the large scale changes with the much finer level of detail. And to generate these results, this is the FBM algorithm which I use. So it basically just walks through for each pixel, this function will get called, and it walks through the different octaves, usually about 8 octaves, but it depends on what you're doing. And then it samples different frequencies with different amplitudes and sums it all up, and you get that sort of result. So this took me quite a while to get to this point, and one of the reasons is I initially thought that what's shown there is Berlin noise, and it seems that if you Google image search Berlin noise, you're probably going to get an image which looks like that. But it turns out, as this dramatic animation will show, this is not Berlin noise. And that's a bit of a problem. Well, that was a bit of a problem for me, because I ended up implementing all these Berlin noise algorithms, and I'd get something else which looks like this. And having used Photoshop Clouds, which I thought was Berlin noise, this wasn't really giving the results I wanted. But it's that sort of fractal nature, which I talked about on the last slide, which gives it a sort of cloudy effect. So moving on to the next section, which is, now that we know how to generate noise which has sort of got interesting, coarse and fine detail, we need to find a way of mapping it to our planet. So assuming we've already got a 3D model of a sphere, whether that's the one that comes with Unity, or whether that's one you're generating yourself. One of the most common and sort of basic ways to map a sphere is to basically take a rectangular texture and wrap around the planet with the top and bottom of the texture at the north and south pole, and then basically in the middle horizontal line at the equator. This gives okay results, but there's a lot of issues that you can get with it. You can get polar distortion at the top, you can get seams, and it's generally quite an unfair way of doing it, because you end up with most of the texture representing say half the planet, and then a minority at the top and bottom representing the other half of the planet. So it's quite distorted, and it's favouring the middle of the planet, which is okay when it comes to things like our world map, because most of the people live in that sort of middle band of the Earth. But I was never really happy with it, and I was never really happy with the fact that there was always going to be quite strong distortion and sort of polar issues to worry about. So I spent a while trying to find another way of doing this. And then one day I remembered that I use cube maps quite a lot for doing reflections. And quite often when I'm testing that cube map is coming through okay, I just map it on a sphere. And I remembered that these tend to look great from any angle. They don't have, they're not focused on the sides, and they don't have sort of polar issues or anything. So I thought I might as well sort of try and use this sort of technique. And for those of you that haven't come across cube maps before, essentially they use 6 textures to map the side of the cube, and they're generally used for storing the environment around an object. So you might have a car or something like that, and you have a cube map representing the environment around it, and you get quite nice reflections. And they're generally quite cheap to use. Yeah, that's what a cube map is. So next I needed to find a way of actually generating the noise into the cube map. And this is quite simple. Essentially all you do is you walk through each pixel on each face of the cube, which will give you, so that this is a unit cube and a unit sphere, and this will give you the position on the surface of the cube. And you normalise that, and that will give you the point on the unit sphere. And then, because you're dealing with a unit sphere, and the radius is 1, essentially at that point, the surface normal and the local position are the same. So that means you can use that to sample noise in 3D, using that as a local position, and it will work quite nicely with the cube map where it's treated as a direction. So we basically pass it into a 3-dimensional noise function, and we end up with a cube map which looks like this. It's quite simple. I just wrote a custom shader, and all it does is it just passes the local position into the surface shader, or it could equally be a pixel shader, and it uses that position to sample from the cube map. So cube maps are generally sampled with directions, but as I just said, you can use it here for, you can pass in the local position and you'll get the same result. And this worked surprisingly well. When I rendered it onto the planet, you don't have any distortion from any angle. There were no seams I could see, there was no distortion that I could notice. There will be some amount of distortion because you're mapping a curved surface to a cube, but I couldn't really notice it, and it was a lot better than the other approach. So, moving on to the final section. So, we've kind of got a good basis here because we've got all this noise generated and we've not got distortion on the planet, so it looks good from every angle, but it still doesn't look very planet-like. So I wanted to look at different ways of basically adding realism. And the first way of doing it is quite a simple trick. You basically create a gradient mapping the brightness values of each pixel, and you resample it, whether that's on the pixel shader or whether you do that on the CPU beforehand. And you get sort of quite interesting results. So in the top one you've got something which looks a bit like sort of Titan or Mars or something. And in the bottom one you can do more interesting things. If you put in these sort of hard changes, you can get sort of continents, and if you adjust that you're going to get bigger and smaller continents. So you can do quite a lot of sort of cool stuff with that. The next thing I did was add an atmosphere. So you can use different layers of noise for different things. So here I've generated an atmosphere of noise at a different position. And I wrote another shader which basically uses that noise to control the transparency at the point. And yeah, it's quite a nice result. And I also added a rim lighting to it as well, where you basically just take the dot product of the surface normal and the view vector, and get a sort of nice rim light, which gives you sort of a sort of atmospheric type effect, and that seems to work quite nicely. But the sort of real breakthrough I had was I still wasn't happy with the cloudy look to it. So I did a bit of research and I found a paper which has got quite an interesting but fairly straightforward technique to it, where you basically use some more noise lookups to offset the position lookups. So for each of the X, Y, and Z axes, you do some more FBM lookups, and you just slightly offset the position of the noise you're sampling, and suddenly you're getting a much more interesting looking result. So the next technique is basically using these brightness values to actually move the vertices along the normal. So if you've got quite a highly tessellated sphere, you can get some really sort of good results with that. And you'll want to do this on the CPU, and doing it on the CPU when you actually generate the sphere mesh, means that you can then just call the Unity to recalculate the normals function, and that will give you sort of really good results, because it means that where you've got craters or mountains, you can use the actual shadows, and you'll get nice shadows inside the craters, and as the light or the planet spins, you'll get nice sort of shadows on the mountains sort of going onto the other side and getting long shadows. Yeah. So I managed to run through this probably a lot quicker than I wanted to. But the sort of final part is just about some other ideas which I've not had a chance to try yet. I've gone through a few ideas of how you can sort of extend that noise and what you can do with it. And some more ideas are things like generating craters just by picking random points on the planet and just picking a random width, and then moving the actual land there out so you get those sort of cratery moon effects. Looking at erosion, because with our current algorithm, the way that mountains and valleys are symmetrical, and that's obviously not very realistic, because over time erosion affects sort of valleys and mountains, and there's some interesting sort of techniques and papers on the internet talking about erosion for terrain generation, and it could equally be applied to this. Also looking at rivers and more complex sort of water simulations, because you could, for instance, just pick some points in mountains and then run a simulation where you're walking through neighbouring pixels, and you can sort of generate rivers out towards oceans. And then you could actually pass it into an erosion algorithm where the water actually erodes the land and it changes the shape. So you can sort of run that simulation for a period of time when you're generating planets, and you'll get sort of interesting rivers and water features. Also looking at variable climate, so having ice caps at the top and then having different temperatures and different vegetation across the planet. So having bands of deserts and tropical regions and areas of tundra or whatever. Having rings like Saturn should be quite simple to do. You can just use noise algorithms and just generate a ring mesh. Looking at more complicated atmospheres, so you can layer up different layers of atmosphere, and you can also sample noise in higher dimensions and get noise which isn't flat, which has got more depth to it. So you can do actual volumetric atmospheres which change, and also man-made structures. So you might have sort of mega structures across the planet, or you'll have city lights to sort of make the far side of the planet, the dark side of the planet, more interesting. takes me to the end of the presentation. So, has anyone got any questions? Yeah.
The noise generation and
Yeah.
the six-sided cube which you then map out to the sphere.
Yeah.
What techniques did you use to clamp the data to make sure that you don't have any seams?
I didn't need to. I was surprised by that because I thought.
So all six sides are using the same data source?
So.
All six sides are using the same global data source?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you generate just a big cube of noise, or?
I don't generate the noise. Basically, what I do is it walks through every pixel on a kind of sort of imaginary sphere in the noise, and it does it that way. So, because all the pixels are neighbours, you don't get any sort of seams or distortion.
Okay.
Who else? Yeah.
Have you got any working demo for you to show us?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good one. Got that one. So that's the noise thingy in general. Yeah.
Is the atmosphere moving independent of background? I can't even imagine, or it's subtle.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. So there, the planet is rotating, but the clouds are moving just slightly faster. Obviously, this is quite exaggerated, but you can get some sort of cool effects. Yeah.
So when you're generating the different layers, it sounded like you're doing them all in one texture. Is that right? Are they two spheres that?
The clouds and the planet.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's two different spheres. So.
Yeah.
See if I can. This is quite difficult to do. Yeah. So there's sort of two different planets there.
Yeah.
How long does it take to generate the texture?
It depends what resolution you're doing it at. I think this is. I'm not sure if this is 512 or a 1K. But yeah, it takes like 20 seconds when I'm doing like all these different objects. I do want to look at optimizing it, but here it's doing a hell of a lot of noise samples, because for a 1K cube map you're doing what's that, 6 million pixels, and then at each of those points I think you're doing 32 noise lookups, and then if you've got all these different planets going on, that sort of increases. So you can get away with sort of low detail.
Just wondering, like, if you up the displacement to like 80%, do you get some really interesting sort of rock shapes rather than planets?
Yeah. Let's see the game view.
And do you export them to OBJ or anything like that?
I don't. I do cache the noise textures to IGPy, the noise cube maps, just so I don't have to sort of run it every time. So I'll just change my display. Yeah, so if we take the planet, let's turn the clouds and atmosphere up. So the displacement's quite low, but if I raise it up to a lot higher. Not doing it. Okay, well that's not going to.
You don't have to rerun it?
No, I shouldn't need to.
Oh,
There you go. It's done it on that.
So you can sort of do asteroids and rocks
Yeah,
rapidly.
yeah. So this would be a lot better for things like moons where you don't have the atmosphere sort of burning up impacts. So,
is it on the assets or?
well, I mean, if you're interested in any of the sort of stuff I've done here, I can sort of show you how the different things work.
It's really, really cool.
Cheers.
How would you go about animating clouds? Say, would like cloud formations or like the clouds moving? Could you like generate some noise that was kind of similar but kind of offset a little bit at one point? Or
so is that clouds which are sort of forming and going away?
Kind of moving.
I've not done that. I think the traditional way of doing animated clouds is to basically add another dimension and use it as time, and then basically sort of resample, adjusting that dimension, and you'll get a nice sort of cloud sort of changing, and that works in sort of higher dimensions as well. So if you've got 3D clouds, you can use the fourth dimension this time, and you'll get clouds forming and going like that. But yeah, I've not done that.
The step you went from kind of very average looking textures to the more defined, you said you found from the paper. Can you go into a little bit more detail on that?
Yeah. So basically, ordinarily we'd just pass in the position into this FBM function, and all we're doing there is we're just offsetting each of the components by some more noise. I'm not exactly sure why it works, but it works.
So I've generated a lot of ones that look like the one on the left.
So
I've generated a lot of ones that look like the one on the left, but I'd
yeah.
like to do ones on the right.
Yeah, I mean, I was quite surprised. I mean, that's basically almost a copy and paste of what he's got in his paper. So immediately it just suddenly looked 10 times better. He's got some interesting other stuff in that paper as well. And sort of in general, there's a lot of cool papers. Yeah, back.
Have you done any work into transitioning from sort of an orbital perspective down to the actual surface?
I haven't, no. Yeah. I guess you'd have to. I don't know if you've seen it, but the guys that made Kerbal Space Program they've got a Unite talk about how they do some of that stuff. And part of that is about transitioning from the surface of the planet right out to orbit and sort of further. Some of the tricks they do in handling large changes in distance with floating point positions.
I'm with Barnaby Smith. Could you introduce yourself to our viewers, please?
I'm a game designer and programmer at a mobile games company in Leamington called Quali. And I've been a programmer for about 16 years, yeah.
So Barnaby, what exactly is procedural planet generation and how did your interest start in it?
So procedural planet generation is basically using computer algorithms to generate the surface of a planet. So it's all completely generated. There's no one sort of using art tools or anything to generate the surface. It's all done through algorithms. And as a sort of big fan of science fiction, it's something I've had a sort of long interest in, is sort of space rendering and stuff like that. So that's kind of sort of where it came from, sort of interest in science fiction.
I see. With so many other engines available, why do you choose to work with Unity?
So I've worked with other engines in the past, and I've worked with building my own engine. But what's great about Unity is it gives you really sort of quick iteration times. It's really simple to get started with, and you can make sort of changes just in scripts and jump back and run it, and you've got your changes sort of 10 seconds later. So it's all about sort of speed of development.
For those looking to try out procedural generation, how do you recommend them to go about it?
I think the best thing is just to look at different noise algorithms and there's a whole bunch of different sort of papers and talks about it, but it's really trying to work out what sort of things you want to do, and then using techniques like noise generation and random number generators to come up with the worlds you want to build or whatever it is you want to do.
I see. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you.
Cheers.
Yeah, hope you can all hear me in the back. Yeah. Cool. So yeah, my talk, virtual reality, navigating its rapidly evolving landscape. So just a quick introduction. So I didn't realise that picture was going to be so scary in the background at this scale, but yeah, who's this guy? So, I'm Leonard Burton, and yes, I do know I have the same haircut as Zangief from Street Fighter. Once I realised I kind of like it, I'm embracing it, I'm going to go with it. So I'm a designer and developer in the web industry, so it's not my kind of day-to-day stuff doing VR. Over the last year, I've been focused on kind of a social media-based project, doing a lot of interaction design and user experience stuff. And I've also been heavily involved over the last 6 months on a VR project called Podrift, which is looking to create an interactive podcasting platform for virtual reality. So a lot of what I've done with kind of my website of social stuff, there's a lot of things that can carry through, so I'm really kind of concentrating on that. So this is my first time I've ever done a talk, so bear with me if things are a bit sketchy, if I kind of skip over things. I've done kind of several best man speeches, but this is kind of a soft of interest, so hopefully I should do a bit better than I did there. So, and yeah, worst case scenario, I can't do as badly as Michael Bay did at CES, I don't know if anyone saw that. So, firstly, question time. Who here is ahead of the Oculus Rift? Bit of a stupid question, hands up. So, pretty much most of you. So, who's tried one? Most of you again? So, who either like owns a DK1, one of the first development kit, or has the development kit 2 on order? So, yeah, a fair few of you. I'm kind of expecting more, but it's always hard to gauge these things. But who's interested in, or who is currently developing or looking to develop in the virtual reality space in the near future, or the foreseeable? So, it's oddly not as many as I'd expected, which might ruin my next slide. But we're going to go anyway. But yeah, this is awesome. So yeah, it's people like us that are going to form a critical part of the VR ecosystem. So without a fully functioning ecosystem, it crumbles. So and consumer VR's chances of success kind of hinge on our efforts as developers and designers. So and it's up until we kind of fill that space and fill the void of content that's initially going to happen with virtual reality, a lot of the big companies won't touch it. So if we don't embrace it and we don't get the ball rolling, then it will fail. So yeah, we're important to this. So what this talk is going to cover, I mean, there's a lot of good advice out there on VR, and I really wanted to talk about a lot of these things, and I ended up doing this big grand plan for the talk and having to cut it right back down again. So I'll touch on a few of those things, kind of expand on them where I can. If you want to ask me questions about it afterwards, I can kind of get into a bit more depth. But a lot of the time, I'll try and mention there's a talk you can go to and do that. So if you're interested in those talks, I haven't got notes for all of these in the presentation, but I'll try and kind of put them on Twitter, I'll try and get them out to download, so if you're interested in those kind of things, you've kind of got an access point to learn more. So, bear with me. Yeah, a lot of the times in this talk I'm going to mention kind of things in reference to game mechanics, just because it's an easy kind of central point for kind of discussing these things, but understandably people are making other applications, it's not just gaming, there's kind of commercial applications, medical applications, so all these things kind of apply to all that, but the mention will be kind of within the kind of the game sphere. So, a brief history of VR, and yeah, why now is the time. Yeah, the dream of VR isn't something new, it's kind of pretty ancient, it's been around for a long time, the idea of kind of astral projection, out-of-body experiences, lucid dreaming, the idea that you can send your mind elsewhere, and the desire to want to take up people to those places as well. So yeah, and it's something that's becoming more prevalent through obviously the last kind of decade but beyond. So we saw in the 1800s people were starting to kind of create 360-degree art, so you can kind of stand in it and look around and attempt to be able to pull people into a creation of your own. I found a great story, which was written in 1935, called Pygmalion Spectacles, by a guy called Stanley Brown and Birnbaum, which is a pretty cool name, so that's why I said it. You can find this online for free. It's well worth a read. It's a story of this guy that has a head-mount display, basically, for virtual reality. And he ropes this guy in to give it a go. And it explains this kind of big, immersive journey he goes on and how he comes back out of the world. And it's all quite detailed. And you wouldn't think in the 30s people were thinking about virtual reality in that way, but it was the case. People wanted to do this for a while. So from the 40s onwards, kind of 40s and 60s, the interesting kind of virtual reality style stuff. There's a lot of military simulation work, and work in those areas. The 60s saw the kind of advent of the first head-mounted display, which was kind of so clumsy, it had to be mounted to the ceiling. The 70s, there were experiments with kind of like almost like a primitive Google Street View style setup where you could kind of go around Aspen, Colorado with photographed from different seasons and kind of wireframe mode. It wasn't really anything kind of too noteworthy in the 80s, but it really did grow kind of in terms of popularity in popular culture, films, literature, comic books. And then we hit the 90s, which are kind of subtitled, those who kind of learn from history are doomed to repeat it, which is kind of, goes a bit over the top, so bear with me. So, yeah, it really exploded in the 90s and then kind of stalled, and there's a lot to be kind of learned from that. But it was exciting times. It was the first time it was publicly accessible, kind of thanks to the company called Virtuality, who worked in the out-of-home entertainment sector, kind of bought you those machines. I don't know if anyone remembers those machines from the 90s. You go to an arcade, pay £2 and kind of go in, and they were good fun. But the technology wasn't quite there. It was quite novel rather than kind of based around kind of experiences. And they had a crack at consumer VR too. I mean, Nintendo came out with the Virtual Boy. Atari had a prototype for the kind of ill-fated Jaguar console. For the PC market, there was the Forte VFX, which was probably the strongest of the lot, but kind of fell flat for a few reasons. So yeah, and a lot of it was because it hadn't matured. The software kind of market hadn't matured the way people work. It was expensive. You had to have an expensive PC to run like these kind of 4K VFX. The headset was, I think, about £600 or $600, sorry. So it wasn't really accessible, and they didn't really concentrate on kind of comfortable experiences or designed for virtual reality. Game development was, at the time, kind of people were building their own engines to build games on, so you couldn't just buy virtual reality gear and kind of get involved in stuff and build. You had to kind of know a lot more than you do now to kind of get your hands dirty. So that was kind of one of the big reasons. It wasn't really the content design for it. It was all things were very tagged on. So why is now our time? Before there was kind of talk in VR in the 90s of it was there. It was just needed a couple of years to mature, and all these things would happen. But now we've got a better idea that we're in it for the long haul. We've got these this grand plans for virtual reality, and we can't do all of it now. We have to work towards it. One of the benefits now is we know that we need to make users comfortable. Things need to be responsive. People need to feel kind of in virtual reality. And we know there's still a lot left to learn. There's a lot of challenges out there. I think that's one of the things that's most relevant to us is kind of in terms of time, as I mentioned before, game engines and such, not being matured, is that, yeah, our time is now. As a great man once said, we have the tools, we have the talent. So yeah, the great Winston Sedmore, Ghostbusters. Yeah, good VR is accessible to designers, developers, and consumers. The tech exists now. We've got the game engines. You don't have to know how to code a game engine from scratch. You've got CryEngine, Unreal Engine 4, and of course Unity. And there's a lot of pre-built assets so that you can kind of grab and use at will. So you don't need to have these kind of grand teams and this kind of technical knowledge that we needed to know before. And we've got the internet as well. You can Google something if there's something you need to know or a technique that someone else is working on. You can kind of question them. In the 90s, the internet was in its infancy, and you couldn't distribute huge files over it, and the discussion wasn't as broad. So getting started is pretty much as easy as being able to drag and drop stuff. So we can prototype quickly with powerful SDKs. The Oculus SDK is easy to start off with. You can download it and just drag and drop into your scene a first-person controller. Or if you're going for a seated experience, you can drag and drop in your camera controller. And it all works. It takes a lot of the hardcore problems of virtual reality are all built and solved in those SDKs. And it's the same with input devices. If you've seen the preview for the STEM SDK, I don't know who's familiar with the STEM system? Okay, not many, so I'll explain this one, otherwise going to get a bit lost. But basically, they've got motion controllers for your hands, and they're wireless, so the idea is you can track yourself kind of in 3D space. So it's made kind of more for virtual reality. And then you've got kind of different points of tracking, so you can have one on your head, one on your feet, so everything's a bit more kind of in-depth. And you think how you're going to apply that to your kind of avatars and such, but it is quick and easy to kind of get going with it. It's their SDK. If you watch the preview video, if you've got your avatar in your T-pose, you pretty much drag in the controllers, put them in the avatar's hands. You drop a script on your avatar to define it as your character. And if you want to be able to pick something up, say you want to be able to pick up a bottle in virtual reality, you drag and drop another version of it, of your controller, onto the bottle where the grip would be. And it's as simple as that. So it's very easy to kind of get going. You don't need to know a lot of this technical stuff. Within 10 minutes, you can have the SDK up and running, be playing around with something in an environment of your own creation. And with any new devices, we're going to need a good SDK to be relevant and to succeed in the space. Because ultimately speaking, if it's hard to integrate someone's product into your game or experience, then there's going to be very few experiences. And with few experiences, there's not really the consumer base there for sales of those devices. And if those devices aren't selling, then you've got no need to integrate it. So there's this whole cycle there. So part of kind of the navigating this kind of landscape as a designer or developer in the VR space is kind of picking those tools that are accessible. If something looks really cool and has, but it's a complicated tool and it's going to take hours to work with, you pick your battles. So because they'll either catch up or they'll fall behind kind of natural selection, if you will. And something that's very important with VR is its own medium. And this is often kind of skipped over. It requires kind of new thinking. It's not kind of far detached from where we are, but there's a lot of things we must consider. So presence is a big thing, for example, in virtual reality. Virtual reality is thought of as a very immersive technology, but it kind of goes beyond immersion. There's a talk on Steam Dev Days which kind of covers this in more details by Michael Brash, who formerly worked heading up the Valve VR prototype, and also, now he works for Oculus. And he explains presence as being more than immersion. The immersive experience is suspension of disbelief, whereas an experience where you're present in virtual reality is fully believing that you are there. So you don't have to suspend disbelief because you believe you are there. Everything's tricked and you're there. So, and it needs to be comfortable as well. It's very easy to kind of go, I've got a really cool demo. There's a great demo which is great fun to play, but if you're at all motion sickness, it will kill you. Called Dragon. And you're flying around and you're a dragon and it's cool. And it's great fun, but it's very novel. And you feel sick really quickly. So it's kind of, people need to be comfortable using your stuff. It's going to put people off virtual reality. And if people get sick after 2 minutes of being in your experience, then they're going to miss all the stuff that you've worked really hard on and it's going to fall flat. So, that's a typo. But designed for VR. Maybe you want to take correct. It was my fault for not checking my slides. Yeah, designed for VR, don't port to VR. So, right, who's played on a PC or a console, a first-person shooter or Grand Theft Auto? Yeah, pretty obvious. Who's played the same game ported to a mobile phone or tablet? So, most of you. Who found it awkward playing it on a tablet? Most of you again. So yeah, content will never be as good on a platform it wasn't designed for. And yeah, mobile gaming is a great example. There's some really good games on mobile designed for mobile. There's games like Infinity Blade, like I Hate It, Angry Birds was well designed for mobile. Games like Temple Run. And these things can be kind of taken and translated from that back to kind of a PC setting or a console setting, easier than it can go the other way. So, and the similar said for VR. So it needs great content, and working kind of within the medium opens up a whole world of possibilities. For game mechanics, there's a lot of stuff you can do that we'll kind of touch on as we go through. But if you're porting on games, you're missing out a lot. You're missing out a lot of experimentation, a lot of fun to be had kind of developing with VR. Yeah, and you're going to be cheating the user because it's not going to be the full experience it should be. So, I mean, Oculus have got a best practice guide that's out there that if you're doing any stuff in VR is well worth reading. But what I touch on is that some rules are made to be broken. And what I mean by this is, as I said, they've got strict guidelines for kind of presence. Your frame rates need to be high, you need to have low lag times, otherwise it starts to cause issues with kind of head movement. People start to, there's a disconnect where your inner ear is not reacting properly. It's not matched what your ear is detecting with what your other senses are perceiving, and that can make people feel sick. So yeah, and low frame rates also can make people feel sick because it's not at all natural. So all the rules kind of around that in the Oculus guideline, you need to stick to. That's kind of a definite. But one of their guidelines, which kind of often talking to other people working in the VR space, there's some people who think that you have to stick with this, but it's not the true. It's that you have to, they recommend a seated experience. And so a lot of people kind of go, okay, we need to stick with a seated experience, we can't explore beyond. We need to wait for them to solve these problems. Yeah, and that's not the case. Of course, you want to avoid motion sickness, but people want walking around experience, people want to explore, people want to be able to visualize stuff, people don't want to be sat down in all their experiences. So, and yeah, what they say when they want a seated experience and the locomotive experience where you can get up and walk around is problematic, is that there's no controllers in existence at the moment that give you perfect presence of motion in virtual reality. But that doesn't mean you can't do really interesting things, really cool things with motion in virtual reality. Yeah, and have positive results from that. So, and they say themselves as well, both Michael Brash and Palmer Luckey in a lot of their talks, is there's a lot of problems out there, and we shouldn't steer clear of them. Oculus aren't going to solve all the problems in VR, even though I think they'd like to. They acknowledge that they don't. So, yeah, we can embrace these problems, we can work on them, we can make them our own, we can define part of the VR space. A good example of this is a company called Cloudhead Games who are doing a game called The Gallery 6 Elements. And they wanted to do a locomotive experience where people can walk around and explore. And of course, motion sickness is the big problem with that. So what they've done is they've found a very good way of being able to kind of, allow people to move around and reduce motion sickness. The problem is when you've got in a game and you use your kind of sticks to turn, your vision's turning, but your body isn't, and that can be, I say, one of the things that triggers motion sickness. So what they've done, they looked at a lot of stuff, and there's a great video that explains it all on YouTube. But to touch on it, basically, they use snap turns rather than a standard turn that we're used to in standard, like first-person shooter games. So when you kind of click the stick to the right, instead of smoothly moving, it snaps. And it's unnatural for us to do that. We don't turn, but the brain doesn't perceive the motion. It just goes, oh, we're looking at another picture, rather than, well, let's look over here. And yeah, that bypasses the vestibular disconnect problem of the in-ear. And so, even though it's not great for presence because it's an unnatural movement, it's a lot more comfortable, and that's a lot more forgiving. Yeah, and VR starts at the HMD. So, because obviously the Oculus have kickstarted everything back up, quite literally, with virtual reality. And it does start at the head mount display. That's the device that's taking us to another realm, it's allowing us to do this. It isn't just Oculus in the virtual reality space, and it's good to consider everything beyond that. There are plenty of input devices and a lot of other HMDs working to enter the market. So we've got, obviously, Oculus. We've got Project Morpheus, which is the official Sony one that they're working on for PlayStation 4. We've got 2 mobile standalone units, the GameFace, who are based in London, and AntVR, who are just reached their goal on Kickstarter. They're a Chinese-based company. But we've also got people trying to make cheap, accessible virtual reality for people who own smartphones. It's a lot cheaper to spend 50 quid on an adapter to put your smartphone in than it is to kind of buy a PC or a PlayStation and then buy the gear to go on top. So that's kind of your different entry points where you're kind of like best at the top and kind of worst but most affordable at the bottom. But what can we do with the HMDs? It's not just looking around, it's not just a device that's visual, it's a device that we can use as a control, as an input device. A few examples. Eve Valkyrie is one of the games that seems to be kind of heading up to the charge on kind of high budget virtual reality games development. They've got a great example of using your head movement or what you're looking at to determine what you're targeting. So if you're in a dogfight and there's an enemy ship, you can look at it and it'll lock it on. So you don't have to kind of steer your ship anymore. We've got other mechanisms to do that. There's a game called Sightline, which uses line of sight as a mechanism. So, which is, well, it's got a great concept. So it starts off, you're looking at a table, and there's a narration, and it tells you to look away, and you look back, and there's flowers there. And it kind of goes through this whole process where it's starting to manipulate the world around you, but you don't see it happening. But it plays you're used to being able to look somewhere and knowing that, okay, there's no doors here. If I look away and look back, there's still going to be no one here. There's no one there before. So, but we can play with that. So you can use these things to kind of evolve things around you. Great for horror games, for scares, things that are generally kind of quite cliche, where you can play with someone's presence in a world and mess with them. It's good fun. And Gestural, this is my favourite one. There's a game jam game called Trial of the Rift Drifter, which if you get a chance to play, give it a go. And they use gestural controls in the head-mount display to drive their gameplay. Alden Dynamics, the company that do it, they've got another game called Earthbound Asunder as well. And you're basically, it's a seated experience game, but there's a lot you can do with it. And there's a lot that translates to other head-mount displays as well. But you're sat there, you have people talking to you, asking you questions. But in Earthbound Asunder you play, you're a deaf, you're a mute, so you can't speak. So that's the kind of way around it. But you can answer questions. If someone asks you a question, yes or no. And so it's a very natural way of doing it. Once you're in the mindset of, I can't speak, then people ask you questions, yes and no. And then things start to kick off and suddenly you have to hide your face. It's a very natural way of working. You're finding yourself playing a game with the Oculus on like that. And it's very kind of, present in the world. And these things we can achieve across all head-mount displays, not just the Oculus. Yeah, there's a lot of kind of control input devices that people are doing as well. So I wanted to touch on how to deal with that if you're starting to kind of get into that space. We weren't going to cover mechanics of the HMDs for input devices in the same way as I have for the head-mount displays, because input devices are very much trying to recreate natural movement within virtual reality. So a lot of the applications are fairly straightforward. But again, still with these things, trying to think beyond the purposes, there's a lot of cool stuff there. We're in a Wild West phase right now with virtual reality in general, especially with input devices. Oculus have kind of taken the mantle for head-mount displays, but there's a lot of people doing Kickstarting and creating a lot of great controllers for input devices. So yeah, it's fairly chaotic. So to nick another great quote, be water. So you need to be kind of stay fluid with all these things that are happening. Approach stuff in the kind of the correct fashion, so you can kind of adapt to all these situations and all these devices. And yeah, just to be ready to be able to adopt something. You might get a controller that comes out of nowhere. They market it well. They've got the SDKs well. It's got a big consumer presence. So if you're working in the virtual reality space, you're going to need to pick these things up quickly and integrate them. Even if it's not the best option as well sometimes. Some things are successful and everyone hates them, but they market well, so you still need to adapt to it. So I like to kind of develop with a progressive enhancement mindset. And this is something I've kind of nicked, a phrase I've kind of nicked from the web world. But it's the idea that you base everything a core experience and core content, and that should be fully accessible. So as your devices escalate and you've got more feature-rich devices, you don't need to have those features, you don't need to have everything there to be able to access your content, to kind of be part of your virtual experience. These things are all kind of added on. So yeah, when you're doing this, yeah, establish your kind of your baseline content, build your core mechanics around this, add all non-essential extras for a richer experience, and slightly more development based. We'll get into seconds, kind of manage your mechanics in one script or object. So the idea is, yeah, so for example, there's kind of a controller called the Leap Motion, which basically uses, it's like a small USB stick essentially, and it can track your hands kind of within a kind of 150-degree field of view in 3D space. So you can use that to translate the games. So yeah, and on the opposite end of the scale for input devices, you've got the PreOVR working on a motion capture suite for games or for VR, and that's got 19 points of tracking at its highest level. So how can you build something that works for this small device that only tracks your hands up to a full motion capture thing? If your game allows it, if you can build your mechanics around it, then it's something that you can embrace. So if you imagine like you've got a game where you're handling hazardous material, you can kind of do all that with just hand motions. So you might want to, as a simple example, if you've got the full motion capture suit, you might be able to move around the table, you might be able to look around it, you might be able to kick things out of the way. You can kind of add these other things, but essentially speaking, your game can still take place entirely just using your hands. And it's worth kind of keeping an idea on the current landscape of input devices. The background is from the PreOVR motion capture suite, by the way. So yeah, you've got traditional devices. I mean, for virtual reality, mouse and keyboard's pretty much out the window. You can do stuff with it. If you can't see and you take your hands off the keyboard and mouse, you have to kind of lift your goggles back up, break the presence to kind of get back to it. So gamepads, always solid. A lot of people have got gamepads. Not perfect, but an accessible piece of equipment. So always a good place for a baseline experience. Joystick racing wheels, again, great for where the context missing. You still can't beat for a racing game having a steering wheel, for a dogfighting game having a joystick. So yeah, we've got other solutions, optical, Connect, and the Leap Motion. Connect's really good if you're doing anything in VR and you want to do full avatar tracking. It's great for prototyping in lieu of having something better, but it's not perfect. Yeah, Leap Motion, great for hand tracking, a lot of applications you can use there. But the really things that are really exciting in terms of motion tracking input devices are the STEM and PreOVR. And there's also a lot of other devices out there that are coming up. We could spend hours talking about these things, like omnidirectional treadmills. Where's the gentleman who's, there he is, who's working on something. So yeah, there's a lot of cool stuff that allow you to be able to navigate experience walking. You can kind of get around a lot of space. So yeah, huge things that are happening there. So as a kind of going back to a more kind of a development-related thing, how do you, if you're using, say we go back to this kind of handling hazardous materials mechanic, to kind of switch between hands and kind of full body? And this is where we typically start using things within virtual reality, is the IK rigs are your friends. Yeah, as I say, STEM system, you can have 2, 3, 5 points of tracking. PreOVR, seated 8-position tracking, standing suits of 12 and 17, so you're dealing with a lot of things here. And IK rigs are a perfect way to kind of fill in the gaps where you're missing information. So working with the Leap Motion, you tend to rig up, say, just the arms with an IK rig. And so yeah, as soon as you enter the Leap Motion, you have it so your hands are positioned exactly, and everything else is kind of extrapolated from there. So you don't need to do floating hands, everything's still fairly natural, and you kind of keep a good sense of presence, because if your arm's there in virtual reality, your arm's there, it starts to feel like your arm. It's a bit creepy. So kind of, yeah, handy hit, working with anything motion device-wise. Yeah, play with IK rigs, they're your friends. Root Motion's final IK asset, which it's a little pricey, but definitely worth its kind of weight in gold for working with that kind of thing quickly. So, but yeah, coming to kind of the way to develop for multiple VR devices, which is a tricky thing. Working in modular fashion, which is anyone kind of doing any development stuff, that's nothing new. So I'm going to just kind of tailoring this to how I work with stuff in VR. So yeah, repeating code is a waste of time. It kind of takes up a lot of effort that's kind of not needed. It leaves more space for bugs. It's harder to manage. So yeah, what I tend to do on the project I'm working on is we have a master script that kind of handles your main mechanic. And then from there, we kind of boil it down. So you've got child objects which contain scripts and SDK elements for various things. So we can kind of select those at will and kind of get them running. That keeps things tidy, and each of those objects will be kind of given a kind of a script just to kind of bridge it back to that master and kind of go, okay, with this device we're just tracking the hands. These are the transforms you need to look at, and then kind of work out sort of the connectors like, okay, right, you've got this whole set of points we need to track in 3D space and send that information across. So an example in the project I'm working on, Podrift, yeah, we want hands and we want full body. So we've got all our avatar movements need to be networked, everything's transmitted. Cool, right, I'll speed up. Things are going a little... So that's what... Right, yeah, so yeah, everything has to be networked and kind of go through a lot of things. So one second, I'll be back in a sec. So yeah, so keep everything kind of compartmentalized. Don't kind of recode everything, rehash every script. Take what you need from one thing on a child object. Don't run it if it's not needed. And pipe all the information you need back to one place where you can manage it all and kind of pipe it out over networks, kind of replay systems, and anything else that you may need to use. Right. I've got notes to read, so I'm... Cool, right. We'll skip these because I am running short on time. I didn't think that would happen. It's good. Right. So, yeah. I know I've talked about a load of things and I've kind of covered a lot of stuff that is... some might be relevant to you, some might be not, so thanks for sticking with me through all of that. But yeah, key ideas to take away. So the kind of points I was trying to make in my kind of roundabout way. Main thing, our efforts as indie developers are essential to establishing and shaping the future of VR. And we are part of virtual reality's rapidly evolving landscape, but the best way to navigate it is to be the people exploring and mapping out these areas. And if you do that, share the information with people, there's a lot of stuff there. Design for VR, spell it right there, Tom. Design for VR, think beyond traditional tropes, acknowledge the rules, but see what happens when you bend them. Kind of, yeah, explore beyond the advice. Get things wrong, feel sick, but just, yeah, try it out. So you don't need to stick to the rules of Oculus. VR is bigger than Oculus, they're just at the top of the pile. Yeah, establish a workflow that works so you can use. So yeah, new devices can be easily integrated into your games and experiences. And this is very much for your sanity if you're developing more than anything else, because there's a lot of things happening, a lot of things are going to change. So you need to be able to adopt devices and ideas quickly. And that, thank you for bearing with me, is the end of that. So yeah, thanks for listening.
I'm with Leonard Burton. Could you give us a bit of your background?
Yeah, I work day to day in kind of the web design and development industry, kind of fairly hybrid skill set. Been working on kind of a lot of interaction and user experience design recently on kind of socially based projects.
I see. So why your talk today was about virtual reality. Why should the average gamer be excited about the future of VR?
It's a completely different experience. It's something that there's a whole level to it that you can't currently get in kind of games and entertainment. It's been kind of described as a new medium, and yeah, as the ultimate medium. It's probably the last thing we need to do is to be able to take people to completely different dimensions and kind of immerse them in it and make them present within that. And there's so many possibilities in terms of kind of interaction, exploring environments, characterizations, being part of narratives. It's a very exciting sector. So there's going to be a lot of good things coming from there. There's already a lot of innovation, and we haven't even scratched the surface yet.
Besides the obvious improvement in technology, considering this isn't VR's first foray. Do you think VR will be successful this time around?
There's no guarantees, but I think there's... if I had to put my money on it, I'd say yes. And I think a big part of that is that the attitudes changed, software development's changed. There's, pre-existing engines, obviously Unity being a big part of these things, and it's so easy to get started. And a lot of the people who are creating the hardware to be able to drive these virtual reality experiences know how powerful it is to have accessible input devices and kind of equipment. So SDKs are as easy as drag and drop. And having that there means that it's quite quick to be able to kind of get running with it. And to be able to hand that off to the indie developer scene will create a lot of content. And that will kind of cement things and kind of teach lessons and kind of get the ball rolling for the big names.
It's been big news that Facebook has acquired Oculus for its VR potential. How do you feel about such companies getting involved in the world of VR?
My first reaction when I heard the news wasn't good, but I ultimately think it's a good thing. A lot of people have kind of stood up and taken notice. It's kind of an investment from Facebook. And as much as people kind of wanted to boycott it, there was a lot of people, and I kind of did think it for a start myself, with like, Facebook have bought it, it's all kind of doomed now. But the reality is they're putting a lot of money into it, they're taking it seriously, and it's allowed Oculus to kind of escalate their efforts. And Facebook, Mark Zuckerberg was very good at what he does within the social stuff. And he's built a great business around it, even if you don't like Facebook anymore. And he knows that Facebook, Oculus, the guys behind Oculus, you've got Palmer Luckey, Michael Abrash from Valve, Brendan Irive, there's a lot of talent in there, and they're bringing in a lot of big names still. And Facebook know that they know what they're doing. And Palmer Luckey have said it himself, if Facebook step in and start interfering, it's probably because they need to step in and interfere. But otherwise, it's still going to be the same product, it's not going to be branded. So I don't think it's going to be detrimental to what Oculus are doing, and it's definitely going to fund things, and it is funding big things and allowing them to pull in more talent. So ultimately a very good thing.
I see. And lastly, you work for a company called Podrift. Can you tell us what they're currently working on?
Yeah, so when I'm not doing web stuff, I'm heavily invested in a project called Podrift, which is just a small kind of startup idea that we're hoping to kind of take further. And what we want to do is bring a kind of a pod rifting platform to virtual realities. The idea that you can step in and be part of an intimate conversation, to view things, to kind of interact, and to be able to kind of take that experience. Because obviously podcasts, a lot of people like to listen kind of on their lunch breaks or kind of at work. And although you can't be working and in virtual, not yet, can't be working in virtual reality, with all these kind of devices such as Game Face and kind of the these kind of mobile-based head-mount displays, it's going to make it a very accessible thing. So working with that space, it's an exciting. We've got a guy called Duncan Trussell, who's an LA-based kind of comedian and podcaster, who's kind of acting as our figurehead. So we're hoping to get stuff out soon and kind of get content rolling. And we're always looking for kind of people to step in and help us out with it. So anyone interested, then just give me a shout, whether it be for testing or whether you want to get involved, make content, perhaps start your own virtual reality podcast. Just let me know.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.